Rural America paints a picture of beauty, quaint towns, enduring values, and communities woven tight. But behind the postcard image, a crisis is unfolding, and it's claiming lives and futures at an alarming rate. The crisis? Substance abuse. In places where everyone knows your name, pain often hides in plain sight. It's a culture of bootstraps and mental toughness, of legacy and pride. But from opioids to meth to nicotine, in the palm of a teenager's hand, addiction doesn't discriminate. It slips through the cracks of barns and back roads, kitchens and classrooms. While cities get headlines, rural communities are facing a storm, armed with fewer resources, fewer clinics, and too often are hidden behind an unspoken veil of silence. Behind every tractor, high school football game, and church potluck, there's a story we haven't heard yet. To protect the future of rural America, we have to pull back the curtain and confront the crisis before it takes hold of another life, another family, or another town.
They don't want to lose their high, and even if it's going to kill them. And, that's the really sad part about addiction.
I was in a family that our main profession was drug dealing. Hi, I'm Amber. I had a hard time getting into schools and stuff because they don't like to take emancipated minors, I guess there's liability issues and such, but so I kind of raised myself. After that, at the age of 15, I was on my own and I lived a wild life. I kind of was in a family that our main profession was drug dealing. So I think I started at the age of 11, and I got into some trouble in New Mexico, and it's called, the land of entrapment. That's what they say, enchantment, but it's the land of entrapment. They say you go on vacation, you leave on probation. And so those are very true statements. And so I ended up in jail. Great life for 12 years. Amazing. We had our own heating and air company, and he just had a lot of emotional trauma. And you always want to fix people. It's just not always a possibility. You know what I'm saying? And so he started getting entangled in these things that were not, they weren't what we were doing, I was a leader at a church, I led Bible study, I was the women's pastor, and my husband was Pablo Escobar. I just fell into that lifestyle with him. And so I had been sober for, I don't even know. Mind you, I started smoking weed at the age of 11. That was the first time I ever did any drugs. I was 11 years old, I smoked weed. 12 years old, I was taking mushrooms. By the time I was 13, I was popping ecstasy. You know what I mean? I actually didn't do cocaine because you don't do the drugs you sell. That's a number one rule when you grow up with drugs. Okay? You just don't do the ones you sell, baby. So, so I just kind of fell back into that lifestyle. It was just really easy. And it was just I had such a battle within myself that it just kept getting worse and worse. And I got deeper in and deeper in. And the next thing I knew, I was in a complete full-blown addiction within a 2-year time.
The average age of a first-time user is 9 years old. My name is Shelby Martinez. I was born and raised in Hereford, Texas. I am finishing my master's degree for licensed professional counseling and school counseling. For a school counselor's position, and then soon realized that there was a prevention specialist open, and I didn't know that I'd be the greatest fit for it. But then I look back in the past, and my dad was an alcoholic. I had issues in college, and so really just based around alcohol, and so prevention became passionate for me, and that is how I ended up here. We live in a very small rural community, and it's one of those places where there's not much for kids to do. So when you have kids and we have sports and things like that, but just like anywhere else, kids get bored and they experiment with different things, and unfortunately, we have the things in our community.
My name is Crystal Ball. I am the Substance Misuse Regional Prevention Provider for Southwest Arkansas. I work for Bridging the Gaps of Arkansas. I do community organization, and I am a regional substance misuse prevention provider. So we provide resources to different counties. We work on 2 grants right now, 2 main prevention grants. One of them we have 12 counties in, the other one we have 17 counties. Do have a history in recovery and some mental health and substance misuse. In our community of Miller County, I would say it's pretty bad. Well, in pretty much so any county, if you want to go, the complete big picture. A lot of kids don't get to live with their parents. A lot of people are having more mental health issues because they're using drugs to try to cope with whatever problems they were having going on in the first place, so it's causing even more problems. And we are trying to get more resources. The recovery side is also trying to get more resources to help people, to help youth that are on substances. Vaping has become pretty much so an epidemic in the youth.
My name is Leslie Garcia. I host like NAAA meetings. I work with individuals working in recovery, and then I work here for the school under a prevention program and working with the kids, just educating on prevention. I started probably using in high school. I think really just I always hung out with an older crowd. Of course, music, I believe, had a very impact on me starting addiction, as far as like Tupac and just different artists that would actually talk a lot about just smoking weed and partying and stuff. And I think just manifesting that as a young kid to whenever that time came and the drugs were presented, I really didn't fear. My parents were 15 years old when they had me, so I was kind of brought up by teenagers, so they were still learning how to parent and navigate through parenting and stuff. So we did see partying growing up, abuse as far as relationships, their kids trying to have families. So it was the norm. Drinking was the norm in our family. Like I said, I hung out with the older kids, got involved in gangs when I was in high school. And it all started fun until it didn't. So I think just not being educated and really just seeing what everybody else was doing, it kind of what landed me in addiction. And then it became a numbing thing for me. It was easier just to, smoke a joint and not deal with my problems. I just allowed the drugs to literally take over my life. So that's how it just really all started.
Man, I mean, if anything, I could tell you how it takes futures. Like I said, we had a heating and air company, and it was amazing, like 10 years strong. I mean, we probably installed 60% of the heating and air units in this town, and we had a house on Kingwood Street. We had 5 or 6 vehicles. I mean, all of our kids were doing great, and I'm telling you, it literally, like, one thing after another, where we lost all of our vehicles, we lost our house, we lost our business, we lost each other. You know what I mean? Like, our family was completely destroyed by addiction, and so it's devastating. It's literally devastating. People always think that you grieve death, and I'm not going to cry, but you grieve that too because it's a loss. Do you know what I'm saying?
My name's Lacey Singleton. I'm the founder of Sober Cowboy, which is a nonprofit organization and, more importantly, a community for cowboys, rodeo athletes, and the Western industry to find community within recovery from addiction in the Western industry. So I have watched a lot of addiction in my family. My dad's been an addict to methamphetamines my whole life and struggled with that on and off for a lot of years. He's currently incarcerated due to that addiction. And then I too struggled with alcohol addiction from high school on for about 10 years. And then when I decided to quit, it was kind of really eye-opening, about a year in, 2 years in, when I am at all of these functions and going around and trying to get through life being sober, surrounded by people that are definitely not in an industry that doesn't support that at all. And so I was talking to my mom, and she kind of said, maybe you just need to tell your story, like start on social media and just start talking about it. And so just creating that conversation, and then it kind of snowballed into this whole organization. talking about all the rodeos, brandings. I mean, anything that you go and help with on a ranch, you're usually paid in, well, we've got coolers full of beer, right? We're gonna give you dinner and you can drink as much as you want with us. And so kind of just realizing all of that and how much in this industry really is surrounded by drinking and pushed, honestly.
My name is Holly Jeffries, and I'm the Dean for the College of Nursing and Health Sciences at West Texas A&M University. Well, I operate rural clinics in the Texas Panhandle, so we've seen that over the years throughout the smaller communities for sure. One of my facilities is at Boys Ranch, so we have adolescent foster care facility, and we get children and students from all over the United States, actually, and many of those have had some experience or environments involved with substance abuse.
Cigarette smokers, if you smoke one cigarette a day, you're still a smoker. But if you have one drink a day, you're not an alcoholic, right? According to society's terms. Repression to addicts is heaven, but recovery is going to be going through hell, but it's worth it.
Well, the biggest barrier to treatment is truly access to care. So we have a huge access to care problem just with the general population, just primary health care, let alone subspecialties like addiction, and access to counseling, LCDCs, which are licensed chemical dependency counselors. Those are very helpful. So that the students that are in the recovery process continue to maintain that accountability and help and support with that. And so we're pretty limited in that, and just licensed professional counselors, as well as specialists like primary care providers and nurse practitioners who have the specialty to deal with patients that have had addiction problems, knowing how to treat them and knowing what's appropriate to help them through that.
So the barriers, that is really why when I started my recovery is why I felt the need to start building a recovery community. So for like Hereford, for example, we don't have no treatment centers. Usually if you're going to any type of outpatient or inpatient treatment, you're going to have to go to Amarillo or Plainview. We just really, I know they do Zoom meetings, which, that's good to have. But for me being for me having my own addiction problem, I felt like the one-on-ones was very important. It was just so much more personal. So, I mean, they have tried to, meet us, the rural area, to help. But I just feel like just not having the one-on-one, the centers we need, the places where people could walk in and actually get the help they need.
A lot of the times it's like when you're in a smaller community, you don't want to talk about it too much. No one wants to really see the bad. Everybody just wants it to be good, especially in small towns, you know what I mean? Because it's so much bigger in a small town. So I think a lot of times we just act like it doesn't exist. Just people need to not be scared to talk about reality, everything's not always rainbows and unicorns, I mean, we gotta face ugly stuff too. We can't just put up a new football stadium and think that everything is great because our stadium is beautiful. But 3 out of 5 families are suffering major addiction issues.
So the resources also just don't exist within rural communities anyway. And so getting to even an AA meeting, can you picture a cowboy walking into a downtown AA meeting? I don't think so.
Substances are more accessible in rural communities than many might believe. A drive through town reveals more than silos and steers. It reveals signs for defense attorneys with smiling faces, vape shops just doors away from feed stores, and dispensaries tucked into aging strip malls. It doesn't take long before the presence of drugs begins to unravel a community. Behind some doors, you'll find condemned conditions, the remnants of addiction, needles, broken glass, and the shadows of illegal activity like cockfighting and dogfighting that often trail behind substance abuse. But some of the most dangerous access points aren't on the street, they're inside the home. It's a story that's been told far too many times. A farming injury leads to a bottle of painkillers. And before long, what started as a healing becomes a habit. Still, even in the darkest chapters, there are signs of hope.
So Narcan education here in Arkansas is readily available. There are so many different organizations that do it. Our organization, Bridging the Gaps of Arkansas, does Narcan trainings. There are probably, I know in my phone I at least have 4 or 5 other people from other organizations that do Narcan trainings. So we try to saturate as much of Arkansas as we can in every region. This is one of the boxes that we use, and it's going to come with, if you see this down here, it's going to come with what the Narcan is in. The first thing you need to do, make sure you do, is call an ambulance. That is one of the first things you need to do, is be able to call an ambulance. Because they need to be able to get there, because sometimes the Narcan doesn't work, or if you've had too much in your system, or you might have to need more than what you have on hand. So you want to make sure an ambulance is on the way. And then we have what they call a recovery position, where you take the person, it's kind of hard for me to stand up and do it, but you take the person, you put them on their side, and then you put their arm up, so that way if something happens and they start vomiting or anything like that, they're not going to choke on it.
Okay.
But you want to make sure that the person is safe. Now, we also have the law, which is if there are drugs in the room and it doesn't matter how many drugs are in the room, if you call because someone is ODing, they overlook anything. You're not going to get in trouble for any drugs or nothing like that if you're saving that person's life. One of the biggest overdose problems is people, teenagers usually, as a youth, trying to smoke marijuana for the first time, or even vaping, and then next thing you know they're ODing because somebody had put fentanyl in it.
I was working at an equine event with a group of guys I was assured were some of the good ones. I chose sobriety years ago, and these guys viewed that as a challenge. My water was sitting on the table when I got up to take care of something. When I got back, I noticed it looked different, cloudy, like something was in it. The guys started snickering, and one of them asked if I liked the treat he'd left me. They'd spiked my drink. As they laughed like it was the best inside joke ever, I just wondered, how is this normal? How is this okay?
Everybody, all the time, everywhere, is promoting being drunk. It's okay. It's societally okay. In our movies, in our songs, in our advertising, everywhere you go, it's okay to be drunk. Even like on a personal level, people will ask me, well, do you think you're ever going to drink again? I'm like, no, why would I do that?
Hereford ISD just got a grant, Youth Prevention Universal, and that is in itself where we can go into the school itself, teach a cognitive behavioral therapy type curriculum, and really gives our kids the tools to have positive coping skills instead of picking up their vape or going and experimenting with their friends. And if we start that from a young age, I feel that will benefit our community. Having a safe place for kids, parents in general, and just being able to provide resources, I think will greatly impact our community.
We have an evidence-based program called Catch My Breath, which is a vaping program. The Department of Health has vaping programs. That is actually, I know in the past year that I've been doing this, that is one of the biggest targets that we have been trying to hit, is doing something with vaping to try to help get kids to stop vaping, because it has become pretty much an epidemic with younger kids. And then some of our counties are on the state borderlines with other counties or other states that allow THC vapes. I'm sorry. And so those counties are kind of having a problem with the THC vapes along with the regular vapes.
We have a program that's called CARES, and it stands for Collegiate Addiction Recovery Education and Support. And what that program is for students who are in recovery, so they've had a past experience of any type of addiction problem. Primarily we think of substance use or alcohol use and things like that, but it can be really any addiction. And our program is here to help them while they're in recovery. They've already started that process. And by the time they are admitted to our program, they have to be in recovery for a full year at the beginning of their first semester. So they may have 6 months into it, and then they complete that year within the program. And our job is just to support them through that process, encourage them, keep them accountable, and really our job is easy because they do it with each other. They keep each other accountable because the students are in the same boat, or they've been, had the same experiences. So it's a very tight community, and it's very good for supporting through stressful situations, and college can be pretty stressful.
There is a big movement going on, I think, in the world around sobriety and realizing kind of the effects that this has on everything, your health, your family, your life, all of it. And so to see people actively working to break that stigma is so cool, because I get to provide something to my family someday that I didn't get. And so I'm super excited to be able to show them that.
I think it changes their future dramatically, because it goes from either going in and out of rehab or in and out of repeated episodes of addiction to a very positive trajectory for themselves, along with their eventual spouse and children and their future, their jobs, their careers. All the things change with really taking that positive road.
It starts on the family level. If we can get families the help that they need, if we can work on mental health being a big part of recovery and prevention, then that will help so many people. Given alternative activities in communities, it helps kids find other things to do. And just having a trusted adult in a youth's life that can be able to help them when they're having crisis or they don't feel like they have anybody, instead of letting some of these kids slip through the cracks.
I just think the other thing that's so big for addiction recovery and supporting them is just the family support. And a lot of times students with addiction problems sometimes come from families that have had that addiction problem as well. So they may not have the support. So here at WT, that's what we are. We're their family for support for them so that they can make it through that. And so we really do never underestimate the power of family and community.
It's a rewarding feeling to know that your friends are home safe and that you're home safe and that everybody's going to be okay tomorrow. You really just have to shift your mind and know that the toughest guy is going to say no to those things. So it was an extreme rough stock event called 8 Seconds for Addiction. So it was a completely non-alcoholic rodeo. No beers, no booze. We bucked bareback, saddle bronc, ranch bronc, and bulls. It was amazing. We ended up having a way bigger turnout than I had hoped for. And we didn't sell any beer. We sold non-alcoholic beers. And we did $1,000 more in sales than the first night of the state fair. They've sold beer at that fair. So I'm like, we can do it. We can have non-alcoholic options available. And even if it's somebody that doesn't have an addiction problem, but they're gonna have a couple of beers at something like that, a rodeo, a show, whatever it is, and they decide, well, I gotta drive home, so instead of having 2 beers, I'm gonna have a non-alcoholic beer with my buddies. And I just don't see why we don't have those readily available with every place that's already selling beer.
Hope is not lost in rural America. It's found in prevention lessons taught in classrooms, in free Narcan trainings that save lives, and in grassroots efforts like the Sober Cowboy. These towns may be small, but they prove that recovery can ride alongside resilience. And when communities come together, when we choose to face the silence, break the stigma, and support one another, we begin to reclaim futures once thought to be lost. The road ahead isn't easy, but it's ours to walk, together. So talk to your kids, show up for your neighbors, support local prevention, because the future of rural America depends on it.